He was a powerful and feared millionaire, admired by many for the empire he had built. Everyone believed he had it all: money, influence, respect. But what no one knew was that behind all the luxury, he carried a secret. He hadn't seen his own mother in years. He had always believed she was living well, protected, wanting for nothing. But one day, fate confronted him with a truth that shattered everything he had imagined. He found his mother not in a mansion, not surrounded by comfort, but cleaning toilets, humbled by life and surviving in silence. That moment broke his heart and changed his world forever. What followed was a painful and emotional journey of guilt, reconciliation, and sacrifice. And when the world discovered the truth between mother and son, nothing was ever the same again. This is the true story that proves the greatest riches are not in gold or power, but in the courage to love. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Oh, and comment below where you're watching from. We'd love to know. Arthur strode through the gleaming corridors of his mansion, where every detail reflected luxury and perfection. Expensive paintings, imported sculptures, and custom-made furniture created an impeccable setting. He had always taken pride in displaying his wealth as proof of his success. But deep down, there was something he preferred to hide. During dinner parties, friends and business partners would praise him for the empire he had built from scratch. Everyone wanted to know about his deals, his travels, his conquests. But whenever the conversation turned to family, Arthur would deflect. He would say his mother was living well, but never went into detail. Silence was his armor. In his heart, Arthur carried a shadow he wouldn't admit even to himself. He hadn't visited his mother in years, believing she needed nothing. After all, in his mind, the money he sent was enough. This thought eased his conscience, but it also concealed his greatest weakness. That night, as he looked out from his balcony at the city lights, Arthur felt a strange pang in his heart. It was as if something was about to crumble, an emptiness that no car or mansion could fill. But he pushed the feeling away, convincing himself it was just exhaustion. His business rival, Henrique, had taunted him that very day. "You talk about everything, Arthur, except your mother. Do you think she's proud of you?" The question hit him hard. He laughed on the outside, but inside he was unsettled. Why did Henrique insist on poking at that wound? Arthur believed that controlling everything was the key to staying on top. But when it comes to family, some truths cannot be hidden forever. He had no idea that fate was about to expose his most painful secret. As he fell asleep that night, Arthur dreamed of his childhood, recalling his mother's tired face. In the dream, she was scrubbing the kitchen floor while he studied. The scene felt so real that he woke up with a start, drenched in a cold sweat. The feeling persisted. Something was wrong. Arthur didn't know it yet, but that week would change his life forever. It would be the moment his millionaire's mask would fall, revealing his humanity to the world. The pride that sustained him was about to crumble, not because of his enemies, but because of an unexpected reunion with the woman who gave him life. And that reunion would not take place at an elegant dinner, but in a place where the smell of disinfectant hung heavy in the air. The millionaire who believed he had everything was about to realize that he had, in fact, lost what mattered most. And life, relentless, was ready to collect its due. The next morning, Arthur went to a luxury shopping mall for a meeting with investors. He walked confidently, showing off his impeccable suit and a watch that cost more than many people earned in a year. Nothing in his routine of ostentation seemed out of the ordinary. After the meeting, he decided to use the restroom. He pushed the door open, distracted by a phone call, until a sight stopped him cold. On the floor, on her knees, an elderly woman was scrubbing the tile with force. The sound of the brush scraping across the floor echoed in the silent room. It took Arthur a few seconds to process what he was seeing. his eyes fixed on the cleaning woman's face. The wrinkles were deep but unmistakable. He knew that look, the way she tilted her head. It was his mother. The world stood still. He felt his heart pound and the air leave his lungs. How was this possible? The mother he believed was living in comfort was here, in rubber gloves, cleaning a public restroom. The image was unbearable. She noticed him. Their eyes met, and the silence that followed was more deafening than any word. Helena's eyes widened, and she dropped the brush she was holding. For a second, Arthur thought she would run to embrace him. But that's not what happened. Helena scrambled to her feet, her face a mask of shock, and bolted toward the door. Arthur called her name, but his voice came out as a faint whisper. He couldn't take a single step forward. The sound of her hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor until it faded away. Arthur was left alone in the restroom, still paralyzed. It felt as if the floor had vanished from beneath his feet. Nothing made sense. His heart screamed for answers, but his mind tried to deny what he had just witnessed. Was this real, or just another nightmare? Arthur didn't want to believe it. He walked out of the restroom in a daze, ignoring everyone around him. The smell of disinfectant still clung to his nostrils, a sharp reminder of the scene. Helena, his mother, was not living in comfort. She was surviving in silence. And in that moment, Arthur knew his life would never be the same. Arthur rushed out of the restroom, but he couldn't catch Helena. She had vanished into the mall's crowd, as if she had dissolved into thin air. A feeling of powerlessness washed over him. How could his own mother run from his sight? He walked through the parking garage in a daze, replaying the scene in his mind. The brush falling to the floor, her eyes filled with shame, her sudden escape. None of it made sense. The image of his mother living well, which he had always used to justify his absence, now lay in ruins. Inside his car, Arthur tried calling old family contacts, hoping to find something out. But no one knew anything. To everyone, Helena was living peacefully, supported by the money he sent. So why was she here, humbled, cleaning toilets? That night he couldn't sleep. He paced back and forth, consumed by a mixture of guilt and anger. He blamed his mother for not accepting his help, and he blamed himself for never checking if she truly needed it. He realized he had been living inside a comfortable illusion. Deep down, shame gnawed at him. Arthur, the man who dominated boardrooms and multi-million-dollar contracts, didn't have the courage to face his own mother. It weakened him in a way no enemy ever had. The next morning, he decided he couldn't let it go. He hired a private investigator to trace Helena's steps. He needed to find out where she lived, who she talked to, what she was hiding. If she wouldn't tell him the truth, he would tear it from the reality she was hiding in. While waiting for the investigator's report, Arthur found himself remembering his childhood, the smell of his mother's coffee, the clothes she sewed by hand, her tired gaze at the end of the day. Why had he never noticed how much she was already sacrificing for him? When the phone rang hours later, Arthur answered anxiously. The investigator said he had news. His heart raced. Helena wasn't just cleaning restrooms. She was living in a tiny room at the back of a cheap boarding house. Arthur hung up the phone in shock. The question tormented him. How had his mother, the woman who had given him everything, ended up here? And most painfully, why had she run from him, as if she were afraid of her own son? Arthur went to the boarding house the investigator had found. The building was old, with peeling paint on the walls and the smell of mildew in the air. Nothing about it resembled the luxurious world he inhabited. Each step he took felt like a descent into a reality he had always ignored. The landlady, a woman with a suspicious gaze, confirmed that Helena lived in one of the rooms, but she added something that chilled Arthur's blood. She never talks about family, always says she's alone in the world. Arthur approached his mother's door and stood motionless. He wanted to knock, but he didn't know what he would say. Shame consumed him. Why had he let so much time pass? From inside, he heard the muffled sound of a cough, followed by silence. His heart pounded. Gathering his courage, he knocked. For long seconds, nothing happened. Then a tired voice asked, "Who is it?" Arthur opened his mouth, but the words wouldn't come. He didn't know whether to tell the truth or hide behind another name. "It's me, Mom. Arthur." The response came out as barely a whisper. The silence that followed was more painful than any shout. Helena didn't open the door. "Go away. I don't want to see you." Arthur recoiled, his chest on fire. How could his own mother reject him like that? He just wanted to understand. But perhaps her pain was greater than he could possibly imagine. That night, back in his mansion, Arthur dove into memories of the past. He recalled the days when Helena would tell him, "Study, son. Your future depends on it." He hadn't realized it then, but her every word concealed the price she was paying in silence. Determined to find the truth, Arthur sifted through old documents. He found receipts from temporary jobs, hospital records, and even letters that had never reached him. Everything pointed to a life of constant sacrifice. The weight of the revelation began to crush him. He wasn't the self-made man he believed himself to be. He was the result of his mother's silent struggle. But there was something else. Among the papers, Arthur found a sealed envelope with his name written on it. He hesitated to open it. What had his mother kept from him all this time? And in that moment, Arthur realized that the pain he was about to feel would be far greater than any business defeat. The next day, Arthur returned to the boarding house, determined to speak with Helena. With every step up the stairs, the weight on his chest grew heavier. When he reached her door, he knocked firmly, without hesitation this time. After a few seconds, she opened it just a crack, revealing her weary eyes. "Why are you here?" Helena asked, her voice steady but trembling. Arthur tried to smile, but the lump in his throat stopped him. "I just want to help, Mom. I can't accept you living like this." Helena closed her eyes for a moment, as if his words were daggers. "I don't need your help," she replied, starting to close the door. Arthur blocked it with his hand. "How can you say that? I'm your son. I've spent my life believing you were okay." Helena took a deep breath and faced Arthur, her eyes holding back tears. "You always believed what you wanted to believe. I wasn't okay, Arthur, but I didn't want you to know. My silence was my way of protecting you." Arthur fell back, as if struck by an invisible blow. How could she think that hiding her pain was a form of protection? His mind filled with questions, but no answer seemed to ease his guilt. "You don't understand," Helena continued. "Everything I did was so you could become who you are. If I accepted your help now, it would be like admitting my entire sacrifice was in vain." The firmness in her voice made it clear she would not yield. Arthur didn't know whether to cry or scream. He felt small before the woman he had always underestimated. For the first time, the millionaire who thought he controlled everything realized there was something he couldn't buy: his mother's immediate forgiveness. He left with tears in his eyes, feeling defeated. For the first time in years, Arthur wasn't the man giving orders, but the son who had to beg for a chance. As he reached his car, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw his mother's shadow in the window. She was watching him from a distance, her expression torn between pain and love. But when he blinked, the curtain closed, leaving only an empty space, and Arthur realized this battle would not be won in a single meeting. There were even greater secrets hidden in his mother's silence. In the days that followed, Arthur tried every way he could to help Helena. He sent money to the boarding house, but she returned every cent. He sent expensive gifts, but they all came back unopened. It was as if she was willing to suffer just to prove a point. One day, he went back to the mall, hoping to find her. And there Helena was, on her knees, scrubbing the floor with the same quiet dignity as before. Arthur approached her and said softly, "Mom, why are you doing this? You don't have to anymore. She rose slowly, looking him straight in the eye. "You don't get it, Arthur. I chose to live this way. There's no shame in work. The shame would be depending on you now, after everything that happened." Her words sounded like a riddle. Arthur felt anger rising within him. "After everything that happened? What are you talking about? I built my life believing you were safe. I fought, Mom, and now I find out you were alone, cleaning toilets?" Helena took a deep breath, trying to hold back tears. "You fought, yes, but you never looked back. I was there, always by your side, and you chose not to see. It wasn't just blindness, Arthur. It was pride, the same pride you now condemn in me." Those words struck him like a sharp blade. He, the man who prided himself on his business acumen, had been blind in his own life. His mother wasn't just suffering, she was accusing him of abandonment. Arthur stepped back, the weight of his guilt growing heavier. He realized it wasn't just about money or material help. It was something much deeper, an open wound between a mother and son, caused by years of silence and pride on both sides. "Then tell me, Mom," he pleaded, "what can I do to fix this?" Helena looked away, her hands trembling. "Maybe nothing. Some things can't be fixed." Arthur felt his heart shatter. For the first time, he was truly afraid of losing his mother, not to death, but to an irreversible distance. As he walked away, he heard her murmur, almost inaudibly, "If you really want to help me, find out what I hid all these years." Arthur stopped, unsure if he had heard correctly or if it was just a figment of his desperate mind. But one thing was certain. There was a bigger secret hidden in Helena's life, and that secret could change everything. Arthur spent the night poring over the old documents he had found. Among receipts, unsent letters, and faded photos, a narrative of silent suffering began to take shape. Each piece of paper was a cruel reminder of how much his mother had sacrificed in silence. One document stood out, a yellowed, nearly torn sheet of paper with notes of hours and payments. They were lists of temporary jobs, sewing, cleaning, catering parties, all dated from the time Arthur was studying abroad. Helena had paid for his education with her own sweat. He closed his eyes, a lump forming in his throat. For years, he had proudly claimed that he made it on his own. Now he realized that every degree, every deal closed, every victory had been bought with his mother's tears, and he had never once thanked her. Arthur considered confronting her again, but he feared her wall of pride would be even higher. Deep down, something tormented him. If Helena had sacrificed so much, why wouldn't she accept his help now? What was she so afraid of revealing? As he shuffled through more papers, he found a different envelope, with his name written in her hand. The seal was still intact. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside, there was a letter. The shaky handwriting read, "Arthur, if you ever find out the truth, you will know it wasn't just love that made me hide. It was necessity. There are things you shouldn't know yet." His heart hammered in his chest. What secret could be so painful that his mother believed it was better to hide it from her own son? The letter ended without an explanation, leaving only a haunting void. That night, Arthur didn't sleep. His mind raced. What had she hidden from him all these years? It was as if her every silence was a maze with no exit. And deep down, Arthur began to fear that the truth would not only hurt him, but would destroy the entire image he had of himself. As Arthur spiraled, his wife, Laura, noticed the change in him. "You can't let this story about your mother affect our business," she said sharply over breakfast. Arthur just looked at her, exhausted. For him, it was no longer just about business. Laura insisted that if investors discovered the truth about Helena, the family's reputation would be tarnished. "You built an empire based on an image of perfection. You can't let one detail ruin it." Her words stung like knives. To her, Helena was just an inconvenient detail. Meanwhile, Henrique, Arthur's rival, was beginning to catch the scent of the story. He had heard rumors that the millionaire was visiting poor neighborhoods, and one of his informants mentioned a woman who cleaned restrooms and seemed close to him. Henrique smiled maliciously. This could be the ruin I've been waiting for. Arthur, oblivious to Henrique's snooping, decided to visit the boarding house again. The landlady greeted him coldly, telling him Helena had asked not to be disturbed. The words cut him to the core. "She asked for no one to let me in?" he asked in disbelief. The answer was a simple yes. Back in his car, Arthur felt his anger grow. He no longer knew if he was trying to help out of love or to atone for the guilt that was suffocating him. But amidst the confusion, he made a decision. If Helena wouldn't tell him the truth, he would find it out himself. That same evening, Henrique appeared at a society event and approached Laura. With a venomous smile, he said, "I heard your husband has been frequenting places, let's say, quite different from our reality." Laura was stunned. Henrique's poison was beginning to spread. Arthur didn't know it yet, but the secret Helena was hiding was about to be used as a weapon by his greatest enemy. And the question that hung in the air was, when the truth came out, would Arthur have the strength to face not only the world's judgment, but also his own mother's? Arthur decided that if Helena wouldn't accept his help directly, he would find another way. He sent envelopes of cash to the boarding house with no return address. He ordered baskets of food and medicine, always anonymously. He thought that in this way he could at least alleviate some of her suffering, but his plans didn't last long. A few days later, Helena confronted him, her eyes blazing with anger. "Do you think I don't know where these things are coming from? Do you think you can buy my dignity the way you buy your businesses?" Arthur stood in silence, feeling each word like a blow. "I never asked for your help, Arthur. Never!" Her voice echoed down the boarding house hallway, drawing the attention of neighbors. Arthur tried to speak, but the lump in his throat wouldn't let him. "If you really want to help me, respect my choice. I am not a charity case in your golden empire." He left, dazed, his heart crushed. For the first time, he realized his mother's pride was as strong as his own. It wasn't just stubbornness, it was survival. She preferred the weight of hard work to the burden of being supported by a son who had barely looked for her. In the car, Arthur wondered, why was she so resistant? It wasn't just pride, there was something deeper, a hidden reason that made her push him away so harshly. That night, Arthur drank more than usual. His mother's words echoed in his mind. Pride, dignity, choices. But what was she trying to protect with such silence? While he battled his own thoughts, Arthur didn't realize that Henrique was watching him from afar. The rival was already gathering proof of Helena's life and waiting for the right moment to expose the secret. Arthur, for his part, knew only one thing. With every failed attempt, the distance between him and his mother grew, and it was destroying him from the inside. The millionaire who always won his battles in the market now found himself defeated by the simplest woman in his life, his own mother. Unable to accept Helena's evasive answers, Arthur went back to the old papers. Among them, he found the unfinished letter again. But this time, he noticed the envelope felt heavier than he remembered. Inside, there was a second folded sheet of paper, almost hidden. With trembling hands, he opened it. The handwriting was clear. "Arthur, you grew up believing I was by your side only as a mother. But there was a time when I had to make impossible decisions to ensure your survival. You don't know everything about your father or about me." Arthur felt the world spin. Who was his father really? What was Helena trying to hide? The letter stopped abruptly, as if it had been interrupted. The lack of explanation was even more suffocating than the written words. He began to connect the dots. The relentless work, the secrets, the refusal of help, the fear of being exposed. There was something in her past that, if revealed, could destroy not only his image as a businessman, but also the emotional foundation that supported him. The next morning, he went to the boarding house and tried again to speak with his mother. Helena was sitting on the edge of the bed, looking tired. He showed her the letter. "Why didn't you tell me this before? What is this secret about my father?" Her eyes filled with tears, but her lips remained sealed. "Some truths can't be spoken, Arthur. They only bring more pain." He moved closer, kneeling before her. "I'm already in pain, Mom. What could be worse than living without knowing?" Helena clutched the envelope and said in a broken voice, "If you knew the truth, you might never look at me the same way again." Arthur felt the floor give way. What secret could be so devastating that it would drive them even further apart? Outside, a black car waited in silence. Enrique, with a dossier in his hands, watched the scene from the car window. The smile on his face made it clear he was ready to turn this secret into a weapon. And Arthur, unknowingly, was about to discover that the truth wasn't just about sacrifice, but about betrayals and impossible choices from the past. The following days were filled with mounting tension. Arthur tried to protect his mother, but he knew something was coming. Enrique, always lurking, had already spread rumors among investors and business colleagues. The whispers in meetings grew louder, and suspicious glances began to weigh on him. One evening, Laura confronted him. "Arthur, what is going on? People are talking about your mother as if she's an embarrassment to us." His silence was answer enough. Laura exploded. "If you don't fix this, you're going to lose everything we've built." Her words rang like a sentence. Enrique, meanwhile, was planning his final blow. At a major corporate event where industry leaders and investors would be gathered, he set his trap. Photos of Helena working as a cleaner were printed, along with documents showing her humble life. Arthur was invited to give a speech at this event. As he walked to the stage, he had no idea what awaited him. Enrique watched from the shadows, ready to pull the rug out from under him. The elegant and demanding audience awaited the millionaire's words with anticipation. In the middle of his speech, Enrique interrupted, his voice rising. "Ladies and gentlemen, this man who calls himself a model of success is hiding something from you. Do you want to see who his family really is?" A large screen lit up. Images of Helena cleaning public restrooms appeared for everyone to see. The room fell utterly silent. Some whispered, others snickered. Arthur felt his face burn. "This is the true legacy of Mr. Arthur," Enrique shouted. "While he poses as a tycoon, his mother lives in squalor, scrubbing the floors of bathrooms." Arthur looked at the audience, then at the photos. His heart raced. He was facing the moment he had dreaded most, the public humiliation of his mother, and in a matter of seconds he would have to decide whether to deny her or to own her in front of them all. Helena, who had been brought to the venue without understanding why, appeared in the ballroom. She was mortified, her eyes welling with tears, looking around without knowing where to go. The crowd was divided between looks of pity and judgment. Arthur dropped the microphone and descended the stage with firm steps. He approached his mother, who was trembling, and took her hand. "Mom, you don't have to be afraid," he said, his voice low but loud enough to be picked up by the microphone. Enrique laughed. "Are you going to own up to it, Arthur? Are you going to admit you're the son of a cleaner? The empire you built will crumble before everyone's eyes." Arthur took a deep breath, looked out at the audience, and declared in a steady voice, "Yes, this is my mother, and everything I have achieved I owe to her. Every brick, every victory was built on her sacrifice. If anyone here sees this as a source of shame, then they don't deserve to stand by my side." The hall erupted in murmurs. Some stood up in disgust, while others applauded discreetly. Helena was crying, trying to hide her face, but Arthur pulled her close, embracing her in front of everyone. Enrique tried to maintain control. "You've destroyed your own career," he yelled. But Arthur replied, "I would rather lose millions than lose the dignity to look my mother in the eyes." Laura, sitting among the guests, watched in shock. For the first time, she saw in her husband not just the ruthless businessman, but the son who was finally bowing to love. The humiliation Enrique had planned was transforming into a spectacle of courage. But at the same time, Arthur knew the consequences would be severe. Contracts would be broken, alliances severed, fortunes lost. As he held Helena, Arthur sensed that the worst was yet to come. The public confrontation was over, but the silent battles against the market, against his enemies, against his own mistakes, were just beginning. And deep down, he feared that the secret Helena had yet to reveal might be powerful enough to shake even this momentary victory. After the event, the news spread like wildfire. Headlines appeared on every news portal. "Millionaire publicly acknowledges cleaner mother." Some articles praised him as a man of courage, but most criticized him, questioning his image as a flawless winner. At the office, the phone rang off the hook. Several investors announced they were breaking their contracts, claiming they didn't want to be associated with someone with such a tarnished image. Arthur listened to each call in silence, his hand clenched into a fist. The price of his choice had come quickly. Laura didn't hide her anger either. "You sacrificed everything we built for sentimental pride. You lost clients, prestige, credibility, and for what? To hug a woman who abandoned you when you needed her most." The accusation was heavy, but Arthur didn't respond. Amid the chaos, Helena watched him in silence. She saw her son losing his empire, but for the first time she saw in him the boy she had raised with so much effort, the boy who was now finally looking at her with true love. Arthur gathered his team for an emergency meeting. Some employees supported him, others resigned. In the end, only a small group remained loyal. It was the beginning of an inevitable fall. That night, alone on the mansion's balcony, Arthur reflected. For the first time, the weight of figures didn't matter to him. What hurt was the question that wouldn't leave his mind. Would his mother ever forgive him for so many years of absence? Helena, seeing his vulnerability, approached him. She placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Son, you may not realize it, but your greatest victory isn't in business. It's here, in your heart. You found me again." Arthur looked at her, his eyes glistening. "But at what cost, Mom? I've lost everything." She smiled tenderly. "You never lost. You're just beginning to understand what truly matters." And in that instant, Arthur realized his choice had been painful, but necessary. He could rebuild his business, but the bond with his mother was something he wouldn't get a second chance at. Still, the fear lingered. Would love be enough to endure the losses to come? The following days brought ruin for Arthur. Major investors withdrew their support, contracts were cancelled, and his fortune began to shrink rapidly. The man who was once respected throughout the city now faced looks of contempt and gossip at every turn. Laura, unable to bear the new reality, packed her bags. "I didn't marry an ordinary man, Arthur. I married a winner. If you've decided to throw away what you had, I'm not going to stick around to watch you fall." The mansion doors closed behind her, and the silence was deafening. Arthur felt empty. But unlike in the past, he was not alone. Helena remained by his side, quiet, caring for him as she had in his childhood. It was a cruel reversal. The poor mother was now consoling her ruined millionaire son. He began visiting the places where Helena worked. He watched the other employees, saw in their eyes the same silent struggle she carried. For the first time, Arthur understood the weight of daily survival for those who never had a choice. One afternoon, as they walked down the street together, Helena said, "Son, you always believed that wealth made you strong. But look around you. True strength is in not giving up, even when all seems lost." Those words stuck in his mind. Arthur realized he didn't just need to rebuild a financial empire, he needed to rebuild himself with new values, based on the love and respect for the woman who had always been there, even in silence. Some friends drifted away, but others appeared impressed by his courage. Small businesses began to approach him, offering modest but sincere partnerships. It was a humble yet true new beginning. Arthur, for the first time, didn't see it as a humiliation. He saw it as a rebirth. And as he looked at his mother by his side, he realized he had gained something infinitely greater than money, the chance to love again. But deep down, he knew the danger was not over. Enrique, publicly defeated, would not give up. And the secret Helena was hiding was still waiting to be revealed, ready to explode at the most unexpected moment. As the months passed, Arthur grew accustomed to a different life. There were no more mansions full of guests, no more lavish dinners with fawning investors. Now his days were divided between small meetings with local entrepreneurs and long conversations with his mother. Helena had finally agreed to live with him, but not in an isolated mansion. Together, they chose a simple house in an ordinary neighborhood. For her, that home meant dignity, and for Arthur, it represented a new beginning. For the first time, mother and son shared not just a roof, but a life. Arthur, once obsessed with numbers and contracts, began to value things he had never noticed before. The smell of fresh coffee made by Helena, the sound of rain on the roof, the sincere smile of a simple client thanking him for his work. These were small riches that no amount of money could buy. Despite the changes, the shadow of the past still loomed. Arthur often remembered the unfinished letter and the secret his mother refused to reveal. He no longer pressed her, but the mystery remained, like an invisible scar between them. Helena, in her silences, seemed to carry a weight she wasn't ready to share. But now there was trust, and Arthur knew that when the time was right, she would open her heart. Until then, he would protect her in any way he could. Enrique, on the other hand, had not given up. From his luxurious office, he watched Arthur's fall with contempt, but also with resentment. He may have recovered from the humiliation once, but he won't survive the next blow, he muttered. His eyes gleamed with the promise of revenge. Arthur, sitting beside his mother on a quiet afternoon, didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in years, he felt at peace. His empire might have dwindled, but his soul was whole again. "Mom," he said, looking into her eyes, "thank you for never giving up on me, even when I had given up on you." Helena smiled, stroking his face. "Son, you finally understand. Life's greatest wealth isn't what we keep in safes, but what we keep in our hearts." The sun set on the horizon, illuminating the simple house with a golden glow. It was the end of one cycle and the beginning of another. Arthur knew more challenges would come, but now he was ready to face them. And deep down, the story was far from over. For secrets still slept in the shadows, and enemies lurked, waiting for the right time to strike again.